Well, the NFL has added the discussion of responsible gun ownership to its social responsibility training for players, according to ESPNW's Jane McManus. The gun discussion is a part of a new pared-down version of the training, which is in its third year. The training has shifted to a more interactive format this year in which players watch videos, then discuss what they would do in a given situation. Damian Whitty still with us here. Do you think this is a good idea for the NFL to have gun training?
Well, you got to understand what's priority number one for the NFL, and that is protecting the shield. So when you look at, the big picture, the NFL is all about helping these guys, whether it's, guns, finances, all those type of things, because at the end of the day, what's good for the players is only going to be good PR for, for the league. And when you look at the players, part of it all goes back to, well, first of all, different gun laws in different states. Right. I think that's part of the deal when you talk about why the NFL is doing this, because you can be in one state with strict gun laws, and then another state and the gun laws are lax. Guys don't get formal training. Mm-hmm. So this is an opportunity for the NFL to get guys under, in a set environment where they can control the environment. Yep. And kind of school guys on what they feel like in these different situations. What's the best way to go about, whether protecting your family or how to use, firearms or so on and so forth. So I think at the end of the day, it's good for the players. It's good for the National Football League. It's a win-win for both sides.
Look, we live in a country with an incredibly powerful gun lobby. And so there are, by most estimates, over 300 million guns out there. Some of the stats are crazy. Gun murders per capita in the U.S. will go into 2012, 30 times that in the U.K., where the U.K. and other advanced industrialized, Western society, but, tougher gun laws. Everyone doesn't have the right to have a gun. So what is it? What did I just say? 30 times per capita. Not because the United States is bigger. Per capita. 13,000 plus people killed in the U.S. by firearms in 2015. 500 accidental murders by gun. That's more than one a day, right? So that's the reality. People have access to guns. There are tons of them out there, and many of these players do. Now, let's start from the premise that these are, by and large, college-educated young men who are gainfully employed, right? So these are, and those who choose to be gun owners and who can be gun owners should be trained. I mean, that's a separate issue from saying whether guns should be so accessible and whether NFL players should be carrying guns or owning so many guns, and that's a separate issue. But once that's the reality, and that is the reality, I don't see the argument, maybe Stephen A. will illuminate me about it, but I don't see the argument against training people. That seems like the responsible thing to do.
You know something? I'm not going to last long on this show. I don't know if I'm going to last long in this business because, you see, I'm allergic to BS. And I'm going to just say it like it is. First of all, there's a couple of things to take into consideration here. Number one, if you're the NFL, you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't even consider doing this. Why? Because it's a potential liability. It is not the job of the NFL as an employer to ingratiate itself into such a situation, because then the potential liability is there because you've involved yourself into it. So when some knucklehead, you understand, one of the few, not the many, because most NFL players are good brothers who work hard, they're family men, they're dedicated to their craft, and they deserve our respect and our support. But there's always a few bad apples that could potentially mess up the tree. And when you open yourself to this kind of situation, you're inviting an elevated level of scrutiny, you're increasing the elements of liability, and it's something that could potentially work against you. So that's just the obvious answer as to why it should be no. But let's take this a step further. Let's think about what we're talking about here. Correct me if I'm wrong, Molly, Max, Damian. We've had DUIs. Mm-hmm. We've had, domestic violence. We've had assault. We've had a whole bunch of things going on. Bottom line is this. The last thing you need to do is to be responsible for teaching people how to be even better at inflicting violence upon somebody, even if it's in the case of self-defense. It's not something that you need to involve yourself in, because when we talk about the hostility that involves professional football, how violent the sport is, how difficult it is to turn off that heightened level of testosterone, and how you're fidgety and you're anxious to get at it and what have you. These are issues that can't be ignored. Now, where do I get that from? Didn't Ray Rice allude to that at one point in time or another? Or people in defense of Ray, not Ray Rice, but people in defense of Ray Rice, if that could actually have happened, where you're talking about how difficult it is to turn it off. When folks tried to make excuses for Greg Hardy, how do you turn that off, et cetera, et cetera. It could be an Alden Smith. It could be a McDonald, or Ray McDonald, formerly of San Francisco. It could be a litany of other players who have found themselves in some kind of a trouble. Let's also bring into question the weed issue. Why is weed an issue? Even though it's illegal in 30 of the 32 states that NFL teams play in, dudes still get busted left and right. Only Colorado and the state of Washington permits it, but the NFL doesn't, because by and large, it's an illegal substance. So why do they continue to use it and cost themselves millions? You know why they do that? They do that because they say it calms them down. So guess what? You need something to help calm you down, make you feel good, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'm going to turn around knowing that you need these elements, these outside elements, costing yourself millions, and I'm going to teach you how to use a gun even better to be a marksman. Pay your own damn money. Find your own way to do it. As an employer, I'm not going to sit up there and facilitate you being even better as a marksman than you already may be, because I'm essentially inviting you to get yourself in more trouble, in my opinion. There's no way in hell I'm doing this if I'm the NFL.
I don't buy that one bit, because, again, the NFL is all about PR. And if you can slow down the number of these type of incidences happening in the offseason, when these type of things tend to happen because guys have a lot of free time, then how is that bad for the NFL?
Yeah,
we know that guys are going to have guns. There's no getting around that. Guys are going to have guns in the league. So if you're the NFL, what harm is it, or what liability are you talking about, where the league can educate guys on how to properly,
I don't think it's about teaching them how to be better marksmen.
Right.
I think it's about responsibility. I wanted to throw one more stat out there. The death toll due to gun violence between 1968 and 2011, not the history of this country, just between 68 and 2011, exceeds the death toll of American soldiers in every war ever fought by this country. Now, what we're talking about there are irresponsible gun owners, right? So, again, tabling the idea and the discussion about how accessible guns are and how wise it is to own them in the first place, et cetera. There are a lot of irresponsible gun owners, and you would assume, since in certain respects the population of the NFL in certain respects will reflect the general population of the country, that there will also be irresponsible gun owners in the NFL. And I think a training program here, Stephen A., is not about, hey, it's not Full Metal Jacket, learn to, be a better marksman. It's more like be a more responsible gun owner.
Like the issue with Plaxico Burress.
Well, I apologize for giving the impression that that's my main concern. I'm saying with the few, that's certainly plausible and it's definitely possible. But the underlying issue here is this. Number one, there is a potential liability there once you ingratiate yourself into some kind of situation in terms of feeling obligated. That's like ESPN sitting up there and giving us giving us, gun training and what have you. No, you do that on your own, because when you get a corporation involved in something like that, anybody could use that as an excuse to believe that you are liable for any potential transgression that comes down the line. But the other side to all of that is very, very simple. We find ourselves consistently, Damian Woody, you have to admit this. We find ourselves, and I know you as a former player who does know how to act, find yourself increasingly irritated by encountering situations where you have to constantly come on the air and discuss the behavior of some of these guys. And what I'm saying saying to you is that if you have guys who are undisciplined, I'm not going to facilitate you being in a better situation where you know how to use weapons better and do all of this other stuff. I would rather preach about how you don't need to have one rather than how you need to use one better, because I don't know how some of these guys, some, not most, not all, just a few, I don't know how they're going to act. I don't trust it. I don't.
So let me ask you this question. Does the league face liability if they're giving guys financial training along those lines? What do you think about that then? Because the league,
I don't believe that's the case. I don't believe that's the case. I don't believe that's the case. I mean, I get your point, and I think you're right about that. But you're talking about dollars and cents as opposed to somebody being physically harmed and ultimately somebody, considering the league liable. I'm not saying they would be successful in that regard. I'm saying it would be the excuse to try and hold the league liable, and you never know.
Stephen A., I agree with you. The optimal situation is if the NFL preaches, hey, maybe don't own a gun, or let's talk. But they're kind of raising the white flag to that idea by doing gun training. I mean, that seems pretty clear, right? Like, look, these guys are going to own guns.
Yeah.
And so I think to Molly's point, it's like, since you're going to own guns, some of you knuckleheads, don't shoot yourself in the foot. Like, literally shoot.
Yeah.
Hey, Plex, maybe if you went through gun training, you wouldn't have missed the playoffs that year,
Yep. And thank God you said 500 accidental murders. Thank God that wasn't more serious with that. But there's so many layers to this issue, and obviously it goes way beyond football, certainly. We see that in our country. Great discussion, gentlemen. Damien, you're going to join us a little later in the show. But up next, we're going to switch gears to the association. Wait till you hear Charles Barkley's problem with Team USA. We'll share those comments